Just a month to go until the Democratic National Convention's formal nominating process. There are questions swirling about who the vice presidential nominee will be. Among the leading contenders, some Minnesota politicians. Valley News Team's Quinn Gorham has the latest.
The entire 2024 election has changed in just 1 week. Now, Kamala Harris, if she becomes the presidential nominee, will have to pick her own VP. And as the conversation continues as to who that might be, some say a pick from Minnesota isn't too far out of the question. DFL Party Chair Ken Martin addressed the media Sunday afternoon, just hours after the president announced he's stepping out of the race. In his remarks, Martin lauded two of Minnesota's politicians that he'd be excited to see as running mates for Harris, Governor Tim Walz and Senator Amy Klobuchar. Both have national recognition. Walz is the head of the Democratic Governors Association, and Klobuchar campaigned for president back in 2020. Beyond that, Martin believes there's strategy behind picking a VP from Minnesota.
If you're thinking about Minnesota, it still is a battleground state, right? We're one of 13 battlegrounds. There's really no path for a candidate to win the presidency without winning Minnesota. It becomes very tough if you lose in Minnesota.
Martin also touted recent DFL legislative achievements as a possible way to energize Democratic voters. Despite Martin's endorsement, Walz and Klobuchar haven't really shown up on many of the short lists that people are putting out for presidential picks. It appears far more likely that someone like Josh Shapiro from Pennsylvania or Arizona's Mark Kelly will be the name beside Harris's on the ballot. Reporting in St. Paul, I'm Quinn Gorham.
Secretary of State Steve Simmons says that any vice presidential candidate from Minnesota would be allowed to remain in office until they are elected.